This gives you a sense of what Gallipoli must have been like and how many troops were there. We can see on this map the hills. We can see what the Australians are trying to do. Here's the Dardanelles. There's Russia up there. British and French ships had hoped to sail through the Dardanelles up here to Russia, but floating mines stopped them sailing through here. Artillery on both sides, forts on both sides, stopped these ships from sailing through. An Australian submarine actually made it through, but no other ships. Here we have Cape Helles, where the British landed. Cumcale, where the French landed. This was a major operation. British also landed at Suvla Bay, and they too tried to advance across the Gallipoli Peninsula to capture this side of the Dardanelles, while the French made their way up this side. The entire attack failed. Look at the territory that the Australians are expected to advance into. On this bottom right-hand photo, you can see Australian soldiers on the beaches. Look at the steepness of those hills they're expected to advance over, knowing that the Turks are at the top of those hills with machine guns, with cannon, with their own trenches. The Australians were at Gallipoli for about 8 months. This required them to swim, to wash. They would have to dig their own toilets. There were all sorts of diseases breaking out at Gallipoli. It was a very, very difficult location to be. While bathing, Turks could actually shoot at those soldiers in the beach. So let's have a look at two more views. The top image here gives you an idea of what the Australians were looking at from the beach. This is below what was called the Sphinx. And the bottom colour modern photo is the view that the Turkish positions had over the entire area beneath them. Think of how they could aim down into that space, fire into that space. That curve of coastline there you're seeing is the curve of Suvla Bay. Let's now push on. So, after important Anzac offensives to capture the Turkish positions on the high ground, the heights of Gallipoli in April, May and August, preparations began for a careful Anzac withdrawal from Gallipoli. The most important battles in this time were both in August. On August 6th, at the Battle of Lone Pine, which you can see on the image there, and you can rewind the video and see the larger context, and the famous defeat at the tiny Battle of the Neck, tiny in terms of area, where huge losses were suffered by, particularly the West Australian light horse regiments. As winter approached, in about October, it was confirmed a withdrawal should be planned. This happened after, this decision took place slightly before a 3-day rainstorm on the 27th of November 1915, which led to drownings in flooded trenches, to give you an idea of how bad the conditions were. In early December 1915, a blizzard of snow killed even more soldiers in the Gallipoli campaign. The withdrawal commenced at Anzac Cove and Suvla Bay on the 19th of December 1915. Cape Helles and the other locations were withdrawn from on January 9th, slightly later in 1916. It's important for us to remember that the Gallipoli campaign was a complete military failure, but the actions and the spirit of those Anzac troops were reported on by journalists C.E.W. Bean, Charles Bean, and Alice Ashmead Bartlett, and this is the start of our Anzac legend, an important part of our study. From here, the Anzacs were withdrawn back to Egypt, where they were reinforced, re-equipped. They were allowed to recover. After that, most of the AIF, the Australian Imperial Force, were sent to England. And from England and further training, they became the first Anzacs to reach the Western Front and fought in Belgium and France. The light horse regiments were reunited with their horses in Egypt, and they were sent to Palestine, what we now call Israel, to fight against the Turks again in desert warfare.